I'd like to call to order the Peabody Planning Board meeting agenda for Thursday, September 15th, 2022, held at Wigan Auditorium in Peabody, Mass. This meeting will be aired Peabody Access Television will be hearing this meeting, television and other social channels. First order of business is continuance of public hearings. I'll suspend the regular meeting at this time to enter into public hearing. First one on the agenda is definitive subdivision Stonegate. We have a engineering memo.
No. For Stonegate, no. They're here, though.
Oh, they're here now. I'm sorry.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members. My name is Chris Sparagis, civil engineer. Engineering and Survey Office. I'll switch out. Okay, let's try that again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Chris Sparagis, civil engineer from the Engineering and Survey Office of Williams and Sparagis. This is a continued public hearing for a definitive subdivision plan for the Stonegate subdivision located off of Pearl Street in Peabody. Attorney Jack Kelty is the attorney representing our client, as I am here on our client's behalf as well. The applicant is, and one of the owners is Peabody Living LLC. And I wanted to just give you a brief update on the recent history on the project. We were last, it's been a while since we last appeared before you for the first public hearing on this newest submittal. This was back on June 2nd. Shortly following, or prior to that meeting, we received peer review comments from an independent civil engineering firm from Meridian Associates back in April of 2022. And then we received Civil Engineering Department review comments from Will Politz on May 17th. We later met with Will Politz on May 26th and reviewed his comment letter in detail before we jumped into the plans to make sure that we understood the comments in the letters. We responded with a revised set of plans. It's the 20-sheet plan set. Most recent plan set that you have before you that I have with me here this evening, along with a lengthy response letter that was sent along to Will Politz's office on July 19th. And shortly thereafter, through discussions with our attorney Jack Kelty, our understanding was that Will was not going to send out the responses back out to Meridian, that we were at the point where he was just going to review them and get to the end line, if you will, on this project. So while Will has had the responses in his office, I decided to stop by and visit Will back on August 24th to see how he was making out. At that time, we scheduled an appointment where I could come in and sit down with him and review each of our responses in detail so that it could help expedite that review. We did that with Will on August 30th of 22, obviously, not just last month, if you will, at the end of the month. So that's where we are at the present time. When we last sat with Will, our understanding after going through each of the comments was that we were very close to the point where he was going to issue, let's say, one more letter with possibly a couple of minor things and hopefully recommending approval. What I've done this evening is put together a list of items that were in Will's letter and the Meridian Associates letter that were quote-unquote deferred to the planning board for additional discussion. And Mr. Chairman, if it pleases the board, I'd like to just go through those very quickly. I believe that most of them were in the Meridian letter. I believe most of these items have been resolved and have answers, but I'd just like to run through them with the planning board. So in the Meridian comment letter, what they do as a peer review consultant, and we rarely do peer review work, but when we do, they go right through the planning board rules and regulations from the beginning to the end of it, through all the appendices, and then compare our plans to the planning board rules and regulations, looking for anything that we didn't do to the letter of the subdivision rules and regs. One of the things that they asked us to do is to provide cross-sections every 50 feet along the roadway. This would result in adding 13 additional cross-sections to the plan set. In our opinion, this is excessive and unnecessary. When we draw definitive subdivision plans for roadways, and we've done hundreds of them through the years, the planning board rules and regulations has a typical cross-section that we copy and we put on the plan set, and that typical cross-section tells the site contractor, together with our roadway profiles, how to construct the road. This is additional detail that in our opinion wasn't necessary, and we reviewed it with Will when I met with him recently on August 30th. So he suggested that instead of doing 13 of them, Chris, why don't you do a couple of them, and that should satisfy the intent of the regulation. So we agreed to do that. That was one of the items that Meridian pointed out that we took exception to, and they were deferred to the board. Their comment number 4 in their letter dated April 27th talked about the responses that we made to traffic impacts that the subdivision may have on the city infrastructure. So you may recall that this project has had a long life. It was a much larger project at one time where a utility impact and traffic assessment were submitted with a prior submittal. There were initial comments from Meridian and Will, and then when we came in to take the project, to pick up the project and continue running with it, we responded to traffic comments and utility comments. And Meridian stated in their letter that we take no exception to the Williams and Sparage's response with regard to traffic, and defer the issue of traffic impacts from the subdivision to the city infrastructure to the board. So we responded that with our traffic report in the subdivision, that the number of trips that would be generated from our project would not be excessive and increase traffic impacts along the intersecting streets. We looked at things like sight distance at the intersecting streets where Pearl Street goes out to Linfield Street, but they did make that statement, so I wanted to put it on the record that they didn't take exception to our responses and simply stated that they deferred the issue of traffic impacts from the subdivision to the city infrastructure to the board. Their comment number 6, Meridian commented that there are cuts in excess of 8 feet along Alvin Circle. That's one of the proposed, the newly proposed roadway that hooks around to the right here. In the existing condition, the grade goes uphill quite a bit on Alvin Circle. So when we take a look and laying out roadways and what the grades are going to be, we are guided by the planning board's rules and regulations with regard to the slope, the maximum slope, minimum slopes of the roadway. And so we lay out the road to try to balance cuts and fills. And for some reason, they made a comment that 8 feet that there were cuts in excess of 8 feet and that they defer the issue to the planning board. But this is not uncommon to have cuts of 8 feet along a proposed subdivision roadway. I've discussed this with Will Politz. We've also added under drains along sections of Alvin Street where we do have some cuts around the circle, just in case there are groundwater that seeps out of the slope at the beginning of the project. When cuts are first made on a project, sometimes it takes a little while for the groundwater to find its new path, and we use under drains along the sides of roadways to minimize any water that might seep out during the early stages of the construction of the roadway. So we see no issue with 8-foot cuts along Alvin Circle. Comment number 13 from Meridian's letter stated that the proposed water line dead ends at Pearl Street and Alvin Circle. We defer the issue of the lines not being looped to the board. Unfortunately, and I don't know why, but they conveniently left out the part that we are looping the water main out to Bartholomew Street. So today, the water main ends when it comes down Ralph Road from Linfield Street. It comes down to the end of Pearl Street and it dead ends. What we're going to be doing with this project is extending the water main out to Alvin Circle, but we're also cutting through a couple of our subdivision lots cross-country and cross-connecting the water main to Bartholomew Street. We reviewed this issue with this question that was deferred to the board with Will, and Will didn't have a problem with a couple of very short dead ends that we have on the project because we are looping the water through to Bartholomew Street. Comment number 32 from Meridian's letter stated that we take no exception to the Williams and Sparagus response with regard to the water infrastructure and defer the issue of water impacts from the subdivision to the city infrastructure to the board. Now, Will has also reviewed the proposed project and its impacts to the water distribution system for the city, and he has pointed out in his letters that there are a couple of proposed homes on Alvin Circle that are going to be built a little bit higher than that critical elevation that you've probably heard about in the past from the city's water tower in this area. There's a critical elevation that if you could construct a home above the elevation, that booster pumps would be needed to provide adequate pressure for the home. And we have identified those homes, and Will asked us to put that information on the subdivision plans, which we did. So they did defer that, Meridian did, to the board, but we have addressed it with the use of booster pumps for these homes, and that information is shown on the plan. In Will's subsequent review of the plans, he also asked us to add a note that states that this information requiring booster pumps be identified in the deed that goes out to the property owners who purchase these homes so that they're aware of it. And we did add that information to the plans. Their comment number 33 with regard to sewer impacts, Meridian stated that we take no exception to Williams and Sparagus' response and defer the issue of sewer impacts from the subdivision to the city infrastructure to the board. Again, this is something that we've reviewed in detail with Will Politz. We are taking our sewer from Alvin Circle at the end of Pearl Street and also tying it out, cross-connecting it out to Bartholomew Street. Will has reviewed the sewer manholes that the pipes connect to as we go cross-country. He commented that a couple of our drain manholes were a little bit deep, especially cross-country, and where sewer manholes travel cross-country and are not along the roadway, it's a little bit more difficult for the DPW to access them if they ever needed to be serviced or maintained. And so we worked with Will to add a few more manholes along the line that goes cross-country. This reduced the height of the structure, making it easier for access to the sewer lines. So we consider that comment addressed. But because they deferred it to the board, I wanted to bring it to your attention. The last comment that Meridian identified in their letter had to do with the construction of the sidewalk. So, as you know, the planning board rules and regulations require a sidewalk on both sides of the streets. It's a bituminous sidewalk. They commented in their comment number 38 that in the planning board rules and regulations there's a discrepancy with how the sidewalk is to be constructed. There is a section, a paragraph that describes it in words. It's section D3 in the planning board rules and regulations that describe the thickness of the sidewalk as 3 inches and that it's to be laid in two lifts, if you will, 1.5 inches of binder course and 1.5 inches of finish with a 12-inch gravel base. Now, the subdivision plan, rules and regulations also have a typical cross-section that I mentioned earlier. And the typical cross-section also shows the sidewalk with construction notes, and the typical cross-section shows the thickness of the sidewalk as 2.5 inches instead of 3. Our plans that we drew copied the typical cross-section, which we normally do as we prepare subdivision plans, and we've shown 2.5 inches. So Meridian just points this out to the board, that there is a discrepancy and defers to you, but they did note that our plans do match the typical cross-section that is shown in the planning board rules and regulations. As I mentioned earlier, Will Politz also submitted a follow-up comment letter on May 17th, and there were a couple of items that he wanted to make the planning board aware of, and they both of these comments had to do with some proposed retaining walls that we are planning to construct in between a couple of the lots. I'm going to just flip over to the topographic plan real quick. I see Attorney Kelty is also here. I think he's also going to be addressing the board after my presentation. So in Will's comment number 10, Will summarized the heights of various proposed retaining walls so that the board is aware. He wanted you to be aware that behind the home at number 364 Bartholomew Street, we have a proposed retaining wall that varies in height from 1.5 feet to 9.5 feet. So this is the retaining wall that he's referring to out in this area here. Between our proposed lot 16 and the drainage basin, the height of that proposed retaining wall is as high as 12 feet. This is that same lot, number 16, and on this side of the lot, we have a proposed retaining wall between the stormwater management area and the proposed home, and that wall is as high as 12 feet at that location. And then behind proposed lot 17, which is the next lot in the subdivision, next to lot 16, we have a proposed retaining wall in the back yard of lot 17 in between the house and the stormwater management area. And that wall varies in height from 2 to as high as 18 feet. Will follows up with his comment number 11, and I quote, "The board should consider asking the design engineer to work on reducing the height of these retaining walls." So we responded to this comment by once again explaining to Will that we've tried to balance the height of these retaining walls with a few things that are driving the design. Pearl Street in the present day comes down at a particular slope, and it comes down quite steep once we get to the end of the where Pearl Street ends today. So what we've done here is we made Pearl Street chose a slope that was close to the maximum allowed by the planning board in order to achieve a grade by the time we got to the cul-de-sac that allowed for a leveling area as best we could do as you approach the cul-de-sac, and then to provide an appropriate leveling area as one takes a right onto Alvin Circle. In addition, we have our stormwater management area, which is at a lower elevation, and then we have our proposed homes that are between the road and the stormwater management area. We wanted to try to create a decent backyard for the homes on lots 16 and 17. And the only way to do that and not have them be too steep is to build a couple of retaining walls. They are expensive to build, but they are going to be designed by a professional engineer, and they will require building permits. This is not uncommon in the city, and we've done many retaining wall designs through our office in the city in the past. So we believe that we've designed the plan in order to accommodate all of these, balancing all of these different things that are sometimes fighting against each other, but we don't want to build these walls any taller than they need to be either. The other thing that we worked together with Will on, Will wanted us to try to keep these retaining walls as far away from the drainage easement, which is the area that the city has rights in to come and maintain the stormwater management areas. And he asked us to try to keep the retaining walls back a couple of feet from the edge of the drainage easement. We had it shown closer to the line, but outside the easement. Moving that back a couple of feet also caused the retaining wall to get a little bit higher. So trying to balance all of these things, this is how we arrived at the retaining wall heights. And it looks like Will just wanted you to be aware of the retaining walls that are proposed on the project. So that's the end of my presentation on items that needed to be brought to the attention of the board through the Meridian Associates comment letter and Will Pauls' letter. And I'll turn it over to Jack real quick to explain what we'd like to actually accomplish tonight if possible. Thank you.
Chris, just before you go, can you just maybe briefly go over what's different on this plan from than was originally submitted?
Sure. So there were quite a few changes made. I'm going to just grab a highlighter real quick. Okay. So where to begin? If we were looking at the previous plan here, I'm going to highlight our stormwater management areas real quick because most of the changes were a result of reconfiguring the stormwater management areas. So portions of our site flow into one of two stormwater management areas. With an overflow pipe that allows overflow to go out to the drainage system in Bartholomew. On our previous design, this stormwater management area was much closer to this stormwater management area, and the slope between them was a little bit steeper. We've done that many times before. I believe the slope between the two basins was as steep as 2-to-1, a 2-to-1 slope, and Will felt uncomfortable having a steep slope between this basin and that basin. And so what we did is that we pulled them apart from one another, pushing this stormwater management area a little bit further up the hill and lessening the slope between these two basins. In the process, we also increased the size of these two stormwater management areas. Early on, when we first sat down with Will, the city has certain standards and certain rainfall data that's used to conduct our drainage design. And we wanted to make sure that we were on the same page with Will with what rainfall data to use, because it makes a difference with comparing the existing condition to the proposed condition and the size of the stormwater management areas. And not too long ago, Will has changed the policy of the DPW with what rainfall data should be used to analyze these things, using higher rainfall totals, referring to the NOAA Atlas 14. That's some of the most current data that's out there. Not all regulations at the state level require the use of this new rainfall data, but Will now has a policy. But because this project had already started prior to the policy change, initially he said he wasn't going to hold us to it. But when we received his first comment letter, he was concerned that he just didn't know what would happen if, in fact, the rainfall that actually fell on the site was closer to NOAA 14 than the previous rainfall data. So We decided to just go ahead and redesign the system using the higher rainfall amounts. And so what that caused us to have to do is increase the size of these two stormwater management areas a little bit. The tops of the berms got a little bit higher. So much of the design effort had to do with reconfiguring these two stormwater management areas. Will also asked us to shrink the size of the pipe. That's the overflow pipe coming out of this guy here. We did additional extensive field investigations to review the condition of the drain manhole that we were going to be tying into, also the sewer manhole that we were going to be tying into. We got actual field information for those things. As I mentioned before, we pulled some of our retaining walls back from the edge of the easement line, as Will had requested, and then added under drains to address the concern that was raised by Meridian, as I mentioned previously, about some of the cuts that we have along Alvin. We have under drains that tie into the street drainage system as a result. We also added a lot more detail to the drawing set. What Will asked us to do is to draw cross sections through each of the basins along the path of the cross-country drain through the basins and out to the Bartholomew Street. Detailed profiles along the sewer where it crosses through the project and goes out to Bartholomew. And so it added a number of additional sheets to the plan. It gives the contractor a ton more detail. I think it's a little bit overkill, but it's more information for the person who's going to be building the project. Let's see, what else? The layout of the lots, the homes didn't really change. In that regard, the plan looks pretty similar. Our analysis also showed, which I think we mentioned to the board last time, that we have a situation because the soils are so favorable in this lower stormwater management area that compared to the existing condition, there's actually physically going to be less water leaving the site than leaves the site today out in the direction of Bartholomew Street. I think we went into that discussion quite a bit last time. We memorialized that in a table in our 3-volume stormwater report for Will, just so that he can have that for the record. We can't always do that on a project. The common standard is just to not increase the peak rate of runoff, but in this case, we actually reduced the volume, which is a little bit unusual. Let's see. We added additional manholes along proposed drainage lines and the sewer lines as they pass cross-country to help cut down the heights of the structures, as I mentioned before. And I think that about covers the changes to the plans.
So I guess just to summarize, majority of the changes were, and for lack of better words, some engineering things, probably things that won't be really seen in regards to what was shown on the first plan. I guess we can wait. I can bring up comments that I may have after this. So.
John Kelty for the project. So only thing I wanted to add was that Chris has done a good job, very good job of detailing all of the changes we've had to make and why those changes were made. There was a time when we were, given the existing conditions, we were a little bit, there was pushback on our part for some of the design standards, but as Chris just related to you, that when we ran the numbers with respect to the increased runoff, it worked. And as such, then we redesigned the project to suggest that we would, or to utilize the increased rainfall data. Interestingly, the last comments that Chris had made were that we did find some extremely suitable soils, and that made, in one fashion, that made all of our concerns and pushback go away with the knowledge that we could adequately store water, and at the end of the day, there would be less volume exiting this site than is currently as a pre and post development. We are greatly improving the existing situation. We have been before this board we're getting near to 2 years. We had some very serious concerns with respect to some of the earlier standards that were being applied. There was a bit of a go-around with the city solicitor becoming involved as to what amount of water we could have leave the site. Turned out happy days are here that we are able to prevent any increase whatsoever in the water leaving the property. And we are hopeful that the board would consider a vote. I understand that and that vote be a vote of approval. We do understand that there has been not sufficient time given the Department of Public Services Engineering Department schedule. Not only do they do reviews for subdivisions such as this that are applied to the board, but the many projects that are being funded and undertaken by the city also require supervision by the engineering department, and that takes our reviewing engineer out of the office with great frequency. I'm also very mindful, because I represent a number of the applicants, the number of projects that are currently before the city. But having said that, we have taken much of your time this evening in explaining just where we are, and we would, if the board would consider a vote of approval, we would have no objection to the condition being that we achieve compliance with the final review of the Department of Public Services. That is, that if Will comes away with more than we have responded to this evening, and there is more tweaking to be done, we're happy to do that, and we would respectfully request that the board consider such a vote. We are in a position where we could begin to build this roadway and all the stormwater management facilities at the end of this month. We have a contractor. There have been many contractors that have been difficult to line up, but we have been fortunate enough to line up an excavation company that would begin in very early October, if not October 1st. We would also, given tonight is the what are we, the 15th of September, there would be certainly a 20-day appeal period, which would take us almost 30 days out before any actual construction were to be able to begin. So we would not, even if the vote is taken tonight with such a condition, we wouldn't make that October 1, but we'd be damn close. And we're hopeful that the board would consider a conditional vote of approval this evening.
Any questions from the board? Dr. Otto?
I appreciate the thoroughness of your presentation, Chris. My problem, though, is that I'm dealing with a 24-page list of comments and responses, and I was trying to follow along as you were picking up the items that are still outstanding. It seems to me that we have two sets of issues. We have issues where you're representing that Will is squared away, Will Politz is squared away, and we have issues where Will is deferring to the board in our judgment. I would really like, it would be very helpful to have something from DPS that summarizes, we started at 24 pages, now we're done to a page, so that the board is very clear on where we are being asked to weigh in on things that are being deferred by public services. It was,
Dr. Otto was expressing her concerns, and was I being asked for a response? I didn't think so.
no, you were
Yeah.
not.
Any other questions from the board?
The issues with public services, would you consider what is remaining minor considerations, or are there any major issues out there that still need to be addressed? And that, I guess that question is for both for Chris and Andrew. I mean, what are we looking at? I mean, what the conditional approval in condition on the condition of what? Minor things or?
So the answer to that question is that we submitted responses to Will and Meridian's letter on July 19th. And I stopped by to see Will on the 24th of August, and then he asked me to come back on the 30th to sit down and go through each one of the items so that he understood the way we responded. And after that meeting, it looked like there were a couple of very minor things, which I have already touched upon. He asked us to add a couple of cross-sections. Instead of doing it every 50 feet, a couple of cross-sections would suffice. But that was really the only comment that, in my opinion, was left unresolved. But obviously, Will is going to respond in writing to our responses. We haven't seen that yet, but all I can do is report to you that we had a very good meeting. We sat down on the picnic table outside of the DPS because the conference room was being used. And we went through each one of the comments, and I consider that we've addressed just about all of the comments, and the only things that are remaining are very minor in nature, which is why Attorney Kelty feels comfortable asking the board, if you choose to do so, a conditional approval subject to whatever additional comments Will comes up with, having reviewed our responses.
Word that I've used is that we would comply with whatever he suggested. So we're not per se looking for the Department of Public Services to approve. That's up to this board. We're saying that whatever the number of tweaks that are necessary to be done, we would blanketly say we would comply with what he's asked. I think, just to go back to Dr. Otto's question for a moment, I think that what Chris has spent this portion of his portion of the meeting was he was going over the some 11, was it, or 12 items that were left to the board. So we might be able to, and I think he has answered what he saw fit to do, and that we're trying to address those that are left to your deliberation. We're trying to address those tonight.
Jack, I think the hesitation that maybe Dr. Otto's referencing is similar to mine, is that the last piece of written correspondence we have is dated July 18th. And we understand, and you know, like Judy said, Chris did a great job of going through the points that he believed was still open. However, we haven't seen a response from DPS post July 18th or even prior, May 17th, or yeah, I suppose May 17th was the last communication by DPS. So you know, while we believe Chris in the narrative he's provided tonight, we haven't seen anything formal from Will or his office. You know, sort of, I guess, responding in kind to what we just heard tonight. So it's the conditional approvals aren't something I'm a huge fan of personally. I'd like to put a bow on something that actually, you know, has all of the I's dotted and T's crossed before, so that we know they're minor in nature and fully satisfied.
I think I reiterate Matt here. I can tell you from community development's point of view, our major concern with this is that While yes, I believe Mr. Sparagas has provided quite the in-depth review of these comments, I am not an engineer. I could not tell you if that is satisfactory or not. That's why we have our city engineer to review items such as this. I'm concerned about a conditional approval on a project like this without receiving Department of Public Services review. My concern is that there is some sort of issue, and if there comes to a standstill down the line, but they've already received approval, but there is not an issue, what kind of situation would we be in then? My concerns also are with that I believe that the Department of Engineering is just a piece of a final condition for an approval where there will be houses being built. I think there's other items here. For instance, when the board approved Birch Hill, there was a list of conditions for everything from traffic routes to hours of construction, items that I'm nervous if that we do not discuss, which we could by all means discuss this evening, but there's pieces in there that we have not discussed with, I'll say, police department. There's going to be blasting that will need to take place. I know that's taken over at the state level, but I think there's issues with that. I'll tell you just bottom line, Community Development Department, we have major concern with a conditional approval without a final review and or comment here from our city engineer.
So, being a very poor mathematician, I can count at least at the board this evening, and I don't see the votes. So I would like to, though, I would be asking that the matter be continued to your October 6th, is it? October 6th meeting, and but I would ask that with respect to the conditions that the Community Development Department may want to discuss or add to this, it would be good if we could begin to work on those and draft those so that if we're fortunate enough to get DPS's final memorandum, we'd have it all put together and wrapped up in a nice, neat bow, with a nice, neat bow.
I am drafting an email as we speak right now to all the departments to try to schedule a meeting for next week. We can wrap this up. I present the board. My plan for a approval of a project such as this would be that the board would have in front of them the plan that needs to be approved. I believe that there's a list of conditions that should also go along with this beyond what the Department of Public Services requires, and I believe it's the board's right to be able to discuss these conditions with the chair. I will send out draft conditions prior to the meeting so everybody can review and then come to that meeting and discuss. But I will work on getting a meeting next week as soon as possible to get with the applicant and the city.
At this time, I would accept the motion to allow the component to continue the public hearing until our October 6th meeting.
12 or 13?
Our meeting is October 6th, so I would like to go just a week past.
The week after to the 13th.
A motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll move that the board accept the continuance proposed by the applicant's attorney for this matter until October 12th? 13th, 2022.
Second.
Have a second, Dr. Otto. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you. At this time, we have a definitive subdivision, Westford Avenue. For the people in the audience, we'll go through what the process is. We'll have the opponent review the process to the board. The board will ask questions and get answers on the process. And then afterwards, we will ask people who wish to speak in opposition and people who wish to speak in favor. We also, at the start of this, will request a motion from the board to receive a petition that was submitted to the board, signed by quite a few members, and also receive a letter from Mr. Langley of September 7th, Engineering Department review of the plan. So at this time, the opponent could please come to the mic.
Prior to that, to clarify, we received a letter this afternoon from Robert Langley, engineer. I have hard copies of it here in front of me, which I can hand out to the board. I did hand a copy to the applicant, and they have been made aware of it. But again, this is a memo that we received this evening. You have one. Does everyone have it? You have one, correct?
I'd like to receive
if somebody would like to make a motion to receive the petition and the memo from the Department of Public Service, or from the memo from Robert Langley Engineering.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the petition as well as the letter from Robert Langley on this matter.
We have a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous.
Good evening. My name is David Ankleys. I'm an attorney practicing law at 346 Andover Street here in Peabody, and I represent the proponent, Ted Smith Enterprises, Inc., in this matter. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Andrew, the city planner, for allowing us and coordinating a meeting with various members of the City of Peabody, the Police Department, Fire Department, Conservation Agent, and others in order to help expedite communication and facilitate communication. Appreciate it very much. As stated in the legal ad for this hearing, this matter involves a request for approval of a small section of roadway known as Westford Avenue. The applicant, Ted Smith Enterprises, Inc., is the owner of approximately 1.631 acres of land abutting Westford Avenue, of which 3,539 square feet are in Peabody, a little bit less than 5% of the total. This request is not for approval of the subdivision. It is a request for the approval of the proposed improvement of Westford Avenue and the construction of a 22-foot wide extension, all as shown on the plans submitted with this application. We have not received, or we did not, as Mr. Levin said, receive any communication until we got here this evening, so I am not able to address anything that has come forth from DPW or Mr. Langley. And I think that's going to have to be left for another time. I can remain for purposes of answering any and all questions that the board might have, but I don't believe that we're going to be able to address that memo, having received it such a short period of time ago. Ted Smith Jr., a member of the LLC making this application, or the corporation making this application, is here with me and Mr. Mello tonight, in addition to myself, and we will be pleased to answer any and all questions that the board may have. Chris? I don't think there's anything more I have to say. I'm trying to be brief because, again, we have not been able to review any of the comments of DPW, and I know it's going to be a long night for you. So I think I'm going to ask that this matter be put over until such time as we're able to review the memo from DPW. But again, we're happy to remain and respond to any and all questions you may have. Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the board at this time?
My apologies.
I have a number of questions, but are you asking for a continuance?
I'm simply stating that we'll be happy to respond to any
Okay.
questions tonight, but that I can't respond to the memo and any technical questions at this point in time, not having heard or received them, but absolutely be happy to answer any questions that you have.
A couple of comments and then some questions. First comment is, there's a petition here with 57 signatures on it. That is of great concern to me with this project coming before this board. There's a lot of people that don't like it. So I just felt that it needed to be said. This is basically a Lynn project that's asking for access from Peabody. Now, I'm looking on Google Earth, and there seems to be another. Is Graves Road, is that in Lynn or is that in Peabody?
I believe Graves Road starts in Peabody, and the circle that you see on Google Earth ends up in Lynn. I think that's the answer.
So is it impossible to have an access from Lynn? Or is it just only possible to have it from Peabody? Because as far as I'm concerned, if this is a Lynn project, well, let Lynn give the access road. I don't know how Peabody benefits by this project at all, other than, you know, traffic and so forth. And, you know, I look at that area up there as a, you know, as a quiet neighborhood, bunch of kids running around. There is a point there that I think that the intersection is probably not as favorable as others for, you know, children and playing and so forth. So my question is it possible to have access to this project, probably at more of a cost to the developer? Is it possible to have access to this project from Lynn? Yes or no?
No. Would you like to have me expand?
Absolutely.
I've been practicing law for approximately 52 years, and I've specialized as best I can, because of my hearing loss, in real estate and the examination of titles, rights, easements, rights of way, etc., in real estate, representing banks, developers, individuals. With regard to this particular parcel of land, I have gone back to approximately 1850 to answer your question. I have found nothing on the record that indicates that this parcel of land has access and egress other than to and from Westford Avenue as shown on this plan. If you do look at Google Earth and you look at some of the other plans that may appear on assessors maps, and I think you all realize that assessors maps are not definitive as to access or egress. You may see a traveled way. That traveled way may be a cart path, it may be a logging path or something of that nature used in the past. The research that I have done, and believe me, I've tried hard to find an alternate access, indicates that there are no rights of record associated with this parcel of land other than a specific grant back in 1924 to the predecessors in title of Ted Smith Enterprises, Inc. At that point in time, some surveyors named Shea and others recorded a plan, again dated 1924, that showed this parcel of land having access and egress to and from Westford Avenue. We also see on various plans and assessors maps the traveled way that I think you may be referring to, Mr. Gagné. There is nothing on record indicating that anybody had the right to grant people, including those who occupy homes there now, a right to use that traveled way. It would not be something that I, as a conveyancer, would certify to a bank, to a title insurance company, or otherwise. So again, my answer to you is no. The only right-of-way that I have been able to find, going back to 1850, 1869, and various conveyances out of the Graves family after the passing of Isaiah Graves, is the right-of-way to Westford Avenue.
So through the chairman, you know, we have it listed, that part of the roadway of Westford Ave it's not an accepted roadway. So Peabody would have to accept that as a roadway first, or in addition to, I mean, you're saying just to use it as a right-of-way. You know, I have an issue with it not being an accepted road, and you know, to me, you know, if someone wants to build houses and they don't have access to it other than through an unaccepted roadway going into a new neighborhood in a different city, it seems to me that they should probably acquire additional land in order to gain access to that project. Again, I think it's a heavy burden the applicant is putting on the residents in Peabody so they can build these 4 or 5 houses. So I have some serious concerns about this project.
Through the chair. David, how is this dwelling at number 1 Longwood Ave extension accessed currently?
Is that the dwelling that you see on the corner of the subdivision road at the end of Westford? Between Westford and what they call the traveled way? Is that what you're referring to?
It appears to be dissected by the Peabody-Lynn line.
Yes. I believe they used, I don't want to mess you up here on this. I believe they used that traveled way as shown on the plan.
So you believe they use Longwood Ave and then?
They use what is called, I believe, the Longwood Road extension, and then there's a traveled way that comes in and loops around. I think that's what Mr. Gagné was referring to. Is that correct, Joe?
Is that shown on this? I just don't see that extension or that traveled way or really how these folks.
I think if you look at the layout of the plan itself, you'll see Longwood. If you follow Longwood Road up, it curves around, and it's called Longwood Road Extension. Goes in front of that house, and then there's a loop that shows a traveled way.
Gotcha. So prior to the right onto the proposed Westford Ave, there's a bit of a, I guess, a paper street or a driveway or just an unaccepted road that goes to this property?
I believe it's just gravel road. It's paved up to the house, I believe. Beyond the house, I'm not exactly sure. I think the pavement ends just beyond the house near the garage, I believe, and then there's a gravel roadway there.
So that's a Longwood Ave right-of-way, potentially. I mean, the city engineer says that Westford Ave doesn't exist.
Westford Ave is shown on, again, a 1924, actually it's a 1915 subdivision plan. It is again shown on a 1924 plan that is recorded. It is, at the very least, a paper street. And as I understand the law, if you abut a paper street of that nature and you have been granted a right-of-way and the predecessors entitled to the Ted Smith Enterprises, Inc. did in fact get a specific grant of a right-of-way to use Westford Avenue, and as I understand the law, paper street does give the owner of an abutter to improve and install utilities in that paper street for the full length and breadth of that street. There are also other laws, I believe Chapter 180, Chapter 187, Section 5, and other statutes which allow an abutter to a street shown on a recorded plan, even though that street may not have been built, to improve that roadway for purposes of access and egress. And there's another statute that also allows them to install utilities in that street for purposes of using their land. There is case law that we, to use some technical terms, there are categories of easements by estoppel, 2 categories. There are also easements by implication. And again, my research tells me that Westford Avenue, as shown on the, I believe it's 2015, the 1915 plan, is the only granted right that is appurtenant to, in other words, belongs to this piece of land, and that there is no other access or egress. If there were, we would be happy to take advantage of that.
So, and then David, considering that I presume the city of Peabody wouldn't receive any tax dollars from these new lots, who would then maintain an accepted road and pay for the cost of that for forever?
It is possible to establish a subdivision of this nature and create a homeowners association that would pay for plowing, upkeep of the roadway. It would also could also pay and provide for trash removal if necessary. We were able, prior to this meeting, to talk with the fire department and the police department, and they indicated to us that it was not unusual in situations of this nature, and I defer again to City Planner Andrew Levin, who was present when we discussed these matters. It was not unusual for the fire department to enter into a memorandum of agreement as to who is going to respond to a 911 call or a fire call, and that as long as the City of Lynn and the City of Peabody and the people responding or the units responding were aware of what their obligations were, that it was not something difficult, and that each of the companies was happy to be able to supplement and respond and work with their neighbor. I believe that the same response was received from the police department. We were able to speak with Chris Garland from the fire department, and I believe it was Sergeant Harkins from the, Chris was with the fire department, and Sergeant Harkins, I believe. Is that correct, Andrew?
We had a meeting, myself, Attorney Ankleys, and Mr. Mello, along with a few other departments, including the police and fire department. This item was discussed. This was the largest concern, one of the largest concerns from community development was response in the case of first responders. The issues that was discussed was who responds in a situation like this. These people will be calling a LIN dispatcher, yet there are technically only not technically, the only access is from Peabody. It was discussed that some sort of memorandum of understanding would have to be established between the departments on who responds to a call. It did seem kind of interesting, but it did seem like something that could be done, and it would have to be done for a situation like this.
I guess much the same way as you had commented on the last hearing that we just had. We don't have any formal comments or indication from those public safety officials or officers in our packet, in our possession. So I don't know if any are forthcoming. I know that Joe asked pretty bluntly if we were asking for a continuance tonight, because, I mean, me personally, with the letter dated September 7th from Robert Langley, I don't see how I could vote favorably for the project. So I guess to Joe's point, Joe's question, or
may I answer? Of course, we're not. We're not asking for a vote tonight. What I meant to say, maybe I was unclear, was simply that we had not received either any comment, and that we expect that we will, and we were not able to review the comments received from Mr. Langley. Everything was done so efficiently. Things moved very fast. In other words, there was an advertisement. Things were done the way they should be done. And as the engineer, Mr. Sparagus, and Attorney Kelty stated, Chris Paulus and Bob Langley are under a tremendous amount of pressure to get a lot done. And we never expected that we would be able to receive and respond to. And but I think I tried to emphasize the fact that I'm happy to stay here and answer whatever questions you may have, but do expect that this matter would be continued until such time as we're able to get those responses from Mr. Garland, Mr. Harkins, and we're able to review and respond to the memo presented by Mr. Langley. We never expected that this board would ever be able to move forward.
Okay, at this time, one more question. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dave, who would be responsible for maintaining the infrastructure constructed in the section of the roadway that's located in Peabody? Sewer, water, things go wrong. It's very expensive to fix these things.
I think what you would have in response to that, Peter, Mr. Avenaitis, Attorney Avenaitis, excuse me, a homeowners association, and recognizing the fact that this is a very, very unique situation. I don't think I've run up against one of these or into one of these in a long, long time. But it is possible as a condition of approval going forward that this board require that maintenance of, for example, the drainage system, which may need to be attended to periodically, and or roadway, et cetera, be similar to, I guess, the one thing that I can make an analogy to Attorney Abernathy's is a condominium in which the homeowners are obligated to maintain and pay for the services that they get.
I think my concern, speaking for myself, would be that we be assured that it would be adequately funded to be able to take care of any problems that might arise and alleviate the city from having a responsibility to do that. As you know, a condominium association charges the unit owners a fee, which is determined from time to time based upon projected costs and things of that nature. And I wouldn't be comfortable with anything less than some real strong assurance that there's going to be adequate funding of any kind of association with responsibility for that maintenance.
I believe that it's possible to be done. It's been done. I've done it up in Newbury and Newburyport and in that area with regard to subdivisions of this nature in which you have a homeowners association in the form of a contract and a condition that becomes something that the planning board approves as a condition in connection with any proposed approval. It becomes a recorded instrument. It gives the homeowners association the authority, quite similar to a condominium association, but it can be a recorded instrument. It can set forth in the association agreement and be a recorded encumbrance, if you will, on the deed out, such that the association would be able to level fees and assessments for the purpose of maintaining roadway, drainage structure, etc. It's not uncommon. It's done quite often in some of the I guess planned unit developments that I've seen. It's done with regard to condominiums, and again, it's not foreign to Massachusetts at all.
Mr. Chairman, one more comment through you. And talking about this homeowners association, you can't talk lightly about that. I mean, to maintain roads, to do the snow plowing, to do everything that involves in street maintenance and so forth. I mean, that homeowners association will cost those 5 new homes thousands of dollars a year, thousands. I'm sorry, but I just don't like this project.
Mr. Chair, before we move on, can I just ask some questions? First question I just have for you, actually, before I start with that, I just want to clarify a couple things in regards to water, sewer, electric, I believe, is still up in the air, but water and sewer is going to be coming from the city of Peabody. Electric, I believe you're in discussions with National Grid, and they believe that they will be able to power you, but if not, a representative from PMLP was at this meeting. They discussed plans that PMLP would be able to power these houses. Said National Grid not do that. My first question that I just have would be these children would be going, if there was children living in these houses, they would be going to school in Lynn. Do you have any idea on how the bus system would work with that?
No.
Is this something that you've discussed with the city of Lynn yet?
No.
I should clarify, as of last time we met, you had not filed yet with the city of Lynn. You were awaiting this approval first?
Yes, we didn't want to put the cart before the horse.
This is, just for the board, this is a strange request. I've gotten many different questions about it. How the board would need to look at this is that we would look at this like any other subdivision, yet you need to look at the things that hit this subdivision, i.e. that there is a roadway. But this is an interesting situation where the majority of the subdivision is, not majority, the whole subdivision is in Lynn with a certain section of it in the city. But I will mention that we did meet with Attorney Ankley's with Chris Mello, the city councilors and community development department. Concerns were mentioned from both sides. We are in ongoing discussions with Attorney Ankley's and the applicant, as well as the community development department.
Through the chair, can I just ask one more question? David, what is Nancy Road, and is that just a more difficult path to connect from Lynn to the subdivision that the developer does not want to undertake, or is it not possible? Nancy Road comes in off of Commonwealth Road and looks like a straight, longer shot to the subdivision, but right across Lynn land and not Peabody land. So,
I don't believe that we have any right to access that road.
don't have any right to access our road either. I mean,
Well, I believe we do,
why more so than that?
because that road does not abut, as far as I can tell, our parcel of land. And
But it's on Lynn property, so I don't understand. I guess, I equate what Joe asked about, is there a possible route from Lynn? I know that, when we seek to tie in, sanitary lines, plumbing inspectors, if gravity is possible, regardless of how costly, they want you to do that. They only allow you to pump when there's no other option. So I guess I'd like to know if Nancy Road is an option to this developer to come in from Lynn for a Lynn subdivision, then why are they not utilizing that, albeit more difficult? Buy some land from the city of Lynn and find a road in through Nancy Road.
there is no land for sale, and we don't have any right to use that road. If in fact we did have access, I would not disagree with you. But we don't. And, if you would like, as part of the direction from this board, for us to continue to explore whether or not we can acquire a second access, we'd be happy to investigate that. But I believe that we have done that up to this point in time. We'll continue to do so. I don't disagree with you that it may make things a little bit easier. But if it's not available, I can't go in and take somebody else's land so that I can get access to mine.
I don't see any private properties owned in that area. I'm suggesting connecting Nancy in this subdivision. It appears as though it's forest land or unused land or perhaps city-owned property. So yeah, I suppose I'd like to know if all avenues have been explored and if it's a can't or we just don't want to.
I can definitely say it's not that we don't want to. And if you request, we will make additional efforts, and I'll report back to you as to what the result of those efforts were. But I believe that Mr. Smith has, in fact, at least with regard to my review of the situation, once I did examine the title and try to see if there were, believe me, if there were another way in, or if we could use that traveled way for our benefit, we would. But again, I can't, as a conveyancer, certify to my client that he has a right to use that traveled way. I can't certify at this point in time that anyone, even though it is being used, has a right to use it. I can't certify that the extension of Longwood Way exists. And, with regard to the acceptance of roadways, I think since Campanelli built Jordan Acres in 1954, there are maybe a handful of streets and roads that were accepted by the city of Peabody. Almost no, there are very few beyond 128 and Route 1 that have ever been accepted by the city of Peabody.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to hear from anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this roadway. Obviously, hearing none. I'd like anyone who did not participate in the petition or anyone of interest who would like to speak in opposition, please come to the podium, speak your name, address, and your opposition.
Hello. My name is Lisa Curtis. My address is 1 Longwood Ave Extension in Lynn. A portion of my property is in Peabody. I do pay taxes in Peabody and Lynn. I am the closest abutter to the property in Lynn that is going to be developed. Also, I am the closest abutter to the paper road, Westford Ave. On 9/8, I received a letter from the planning board stating they would have a hearing on 9/15 to make this a street. It was mailed to the wrong address. Thankfully, I received it. I spoke to my neighbors, and no one else received this letter. This is when we collectively decided to start a petition to protest the development of Westwood Ave to have access to Lynn. These are my concerns. Destruction to the homes, foundations due to excessive blasting, because all Peabody and Lynn is ledge up there. Huge traffic to gain access to Lynn. Water pressure that right now is extremely low. Right now, there are no curbs on the sidewalk on Longwood Ave. With the added traffic, it makes it very dangerous for the children in the neighborhood. If you are building in Lynn, you should come in from Lynn. For an example, Graves Ave is in Lynn. This does not benefit Peabody at all. No taxes, no revenue. So what I am asking is for the planning board to consider putting this project on hold till city officials can come out and view the neighborhood and visually see what is happening. This will not benefit Peabody nor the neighborhood of Longwood Ave. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
My name is George Guanci, and I live at 5 Elaine Avenue. Made a few notes as I was sitting there. Should have brought my glasses with me. However, I just want to preface my comments by saying I was born in Lynn and lived the first 5 years of my life in Lynn. My mother was an immigrant, and I only mention that because I truly appreciate the history of Lynn and what immigrants have contributed to the city of Lynn. But I've lived in Peabody and the neighborhood of Elaine Avenue, Longwood Avenue, for the better part of 66 years. That neighborhood was first developed approximately 120 years ago, and my family's been up there for more than half of that time. I want to commend the counselor for meeting with the police and fire departments, but it would have been nice for you to meet with the neighborhood in addition to the fire department and the police department and get our opinion or inform us more thoroughly as to what your plans are. I want to state that the city of Peabody and the taxpayers of Peabody have absolutely no obligation to build or maintain a road to this development. This will not be a one-time expense for the taxpayers and the neighborhood. It will be an ongoing expense in perpetuity. The roads to be affected by this development, and this is just the beginning of a development. Wait 5 years from now or 10 years from now and see how many houses will be proposed for that area. But the roads that will be affected by this development are indeed Longwood Avenue, Elaine Avenue, but also Bowditch and Druid and Spring Pond Road. If any of you are familiar with Druid, you can't get two cars past each other. One has to pull over and allow the car to pass. Or if you're turning that corner and you see a car coming, you're coming up Elaine Avenue, you have to pull to the side, let that car out. Bowditch is not much different. So there will be added traffic, not only by the residents of this development coming down Longwood Avenue and turning either into Bowditch and then down to Druid and then onto Spring Pond Road to get either further into Peabody or back to Lynn, but they'll come down Elaine Avenue onto Lynn Street. And it will all not only be the residents of that neighborhood, it'll be delivery trucks. We'll see UPS. We'll see Amazon trucks up there. And they'll be coming back and forth. And then the snowplows and other services that will have to be maintaining that area. And this is just the beginning, as I said. More homes and more traffic will come in the future. And the children of this neighborhood will have more obstacles to dodge as they play. And there are children that occasionally go out into these streets. I would urge the counselor to more forcefully and thoroughly pursue with the city of Lynn, and if the state, if it need be done, to get permission, I know that's not the right legal term, for a modification of the building code to build either from Commonwealth Avenue, I believe it is, off Broadway, or even from the Verona, end of Verona Avenue, which is off Euclid. I'm sure they don't want to do that because it's going to cost more money. It has nothing to do with environmental or historic reasons. So I say go through that area. And with regards to the fire department and the police department maintaining it, I had a situation a little over a week ago, it's probably at least 2 weeks ago now, when I was walking with my wife down Spring Pond Road, and we followed the trail up towards Fays Avenue in Lynn. We came down a trail from Fays Avenue area, down to Spring Pond again, and as we were walking down on the shoreline, we could smell smoke. And this can be corroborated by a Lynn police officer and the Peabody Fire Department. So as we were walking along the shore, we could smell smoke, and as we walked closer around the bend to return back to Spring Pond Road, someone had lit a few days earlier, or a couple of days earlier, a fire in the brush. Or perhaps it wasn't lit, somehow the fire was lit, either through natural causes or some, intentional cause. But it was smoldering, so I was afraid it would start again. So what I did was call the Peabody Fire Department. I told them where it was. I explained to them that they had to go to Fays Avenue in Lynn to access this area, come down Fays Avenue. And so the gentleman who answered the phone asked me if I would wait there, which I did for 20 minutes. I could hear in the distance a fire truck, an alarm, but after 20 minutes, no one came. So I walked back down there, and my wife was walking with me. She had gone. She said she was going to go to the car. And as I was walking, when I got to Spring Pond Road, there was this police officer that I mentioned from Lynn and my wife. And they said that the fire department indeed did come, but when they found out they had to walk to the Lynn side, they decided that it was too far and they couldn't make it. Now, I'm not placing a judgment on the fire department. They have been tremendous, and they are tremendous. But this disputes the conclusion that the fire department will just go up there and go to Lynn and take care of things. And with regards to a homeowners association, I would love to know how many homeowners associations there are in Lynn, Massachusetts. So in any case, I urge you to vote against this and oppose this development, because again, It's just the start, and there'll be more traffic and more expense and more cost. Thank you. I hope I didn't preach too much, but thank you very much for the opportunity.
Hi, my name is Helen Hensley, and, okay, excuse me? I was just going to get to that. So my name is Helen Hensley, and I reside at 24 Longwood Avenue, which is almost across the street from the proposed Westwood Street issue. I've been here for over 26 years, okay, and it's a tough one. Okay, first of all, though, I would like to ask the board, or why the neighborhood, we never received a notice on this paper street for Westwood for this TED to build the street into Lynn to get to the homes, the subdivision, which is only going to get enlarged and enlarged more, lots of land back there. Okay, and also, like the traffic, our street is very small, and I mean, I would love for whoever makes these decisions to come down and at least look to see. This street is so small, like if we park out front, yes, then the people can go up and down, and also, our cars have been hit like 3-4 times. We do have a lot of traffic that comes up the street that like to turn around. They don't see the no through, can't go through. They don't. I don't know if they don't. Maybe they don't see the sign. I don't know. They turn around my driveway or my backyard, or they may go up the hill and turn around, depending. So that's been a big issue as well. And then also, let's see. We do have a lot of concerns. One, there's a lot of ledge. We know this, and we're concerned about our home and the foundation with the blasting. And when they dig, you know there's going to be a lot of rats, mice, and who knows what else we're going to get out of that. And then we also have a woman who does daycare on Longwood Avenue. She walks those children almost daily. I see her walking up and down with those kids. So that's a concern in case one of them gets loose. As well as there are many other children that live in the neighborhood also. So I do also want to show you, we did have the petition, which I know you're aware of, with a few more added on. But I was hoping you would just take a quick look at these, because in the wintertime, this is what we have to put up with every winter. Would you mind if I had you look at these? That's in front of my house and down a little bit more. And it's quite thick. It's like 2 inches. It's a lot of ice.
Drew, while we look at the photos, could you address was there an issue with notification of butters?
Per section 81T of the Massachusetts General Law, you have to notify all the butters that are directly abutting the property, so it's people that are touching it, so they were notified. A list that was handed to me by our assessor's office that was filed by the applicant.
So how many, does that include, I'm assuming that includes, was there, I'm not going to say this.
It was about 3, or I think it was about 3 people that were finally notified. It was Lynn City Hall, Miss Curtis, and then I believe one other abutter.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, the street is very small. You would, whether you come up and check it out, you would understand that, where we're coming from. But, you know, also I'd like to, I would really like to know how Peabody will benefit from this project at our expense. So there's really no, I don't know why. I mean, he's building in Lynn, the subdivision, and eventually there'll be more and more. Let's see. So if he's building in Lynn, has the exit going out to Lynn. I think you should continue with the Lynn and not bother our little street in Peabody, that little community, and but then all of a sudden, more cars, whatever. Each house has 2 cars. You know, they're going to double. We're going to see a lot more traffic. So basically, I think that's all I can say for now.
Oh, thank you. Anyone else that has anything different other than the comments that have been made by the last two? Come to the podium with...
Okay, do you need those pictures? Because you can have them if you need them. Okay, thank you.
My name is John Gomes. I live the direct abutting house, 13 Longwood Ave. Did you say earlier that, sorry, I didn't catch your name. Did you say earlier that 3 people were notified about the abutters?
There was 3 separate addresses that it came down to.
Could you provide the addresses?
I can. It was Ted Smith Enterprises, Lisa Curtis and Paula Lynn's, and then Lynn City Hall.
Okay, so 13 was not?
Is direct abutters of the property.
Direct abutters of the property, not the Westford Street?
Yeah, it would be direct so how it would work, and the applicant can clarify this, but he submits a form to the assessor's office. He checks off which he is filing under, which would be section 81T. The assessor's office then provides him a list of all addresses of the property that meets the section 81T guidelines.
Okay.
There was a couple duplicates in there. That's why it only came out to 3 at the end that actually were different.
Okay, so the Westford Street is not the property in question, or is it just the development?
It would be the lot that he owns that is this. So there is a Paper Street Westford, which is unapproved at the moment. Then there is a lot that Mr. Smith owns that happens to be in the city of Peabody, which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, David and Chris, it's 21 feet that actually is in the city of Peabody, and then the rest of his property is in the city of Lynn.
Okay. One other thing that I just wanted to ask, just because I was confused. The gentleman said that he didn't want to take anyone's land in Lynn to make an easement or to make an entranceway. But according to Mass Law, General Chapter 13858, it provides a legal presumption that ownership of a paper road or easement is the direct abutter to the center point, and I am the direct abutter of Westford Ave, and so by that law, I would be up to the center point. I have the right. So I just was confused on why he would say he didn't want to take land from someone else, but the law states something different. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask him a question or...
How it would happen is that we would respectfully ask that if you do have a question for the applicant, that you would ask the board, and the board would then provide, the chair could ask the applicant these questions.
Okay.
Just to clarify what it would be your question.
My question mainly is, number one, he said he didn't want to take any land from someone in Lynn to create an entranceway, but why is that okay for someone in Peabody? And then the second question would be...
Is he taking land from you?
He's taking a right of easement, yes. Because that paper road, I'm the direct abutter. I own to the center line. No? Yes. So
The Speaker, Mr. Gomes, owns a lot of land at the corner of Westford and Longwood Road. That lot of land is subject to, if in fact he does have a right or ownership interest, to the center line of either Longwood or Westford. That right is subject to the right of others to pass and repass. It is also subject to the right of others to improve Longwood and Westford and to install utilities pursuant to law. Even if he has, or any of the people along Westford or Longwood or Elaine or Springborn Road have ownership to the center line.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, sir?
That answers my question, yes. I appreciate the time. I just wanted to say that I am opposed to this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything to say any different than?
Can I add something?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Eli Zeiter. I live on Longwood Ave, number 14, Longwood Ave. About 10 years ago, I bought this house, 14 Longwood Ave, and it was a... Okay. 10 years ago, I bought this house on 14 Longwood Ave, number 14. It was a complete disaster. It was old house, had to be redone over inside, completely remodeled, completely rebuilt. The yard was a disaster. I spent back in 2012 and 13, it took me almost a year and a half, almost 2 years actually. Spent back then, and I spent $160,000 on that house. And today's money is over $200,000. And recently I just did the yard over, a complete transformation. Now, why did I spend all that money on top of the price that I paid back then? It's because of the location. The street was quiet, was peaceful, it was a dead end. And so I was patient with it. I spent a lot of money on it because of the location. As a matter of fact, before I bought the house, I drove for a month, different times, 2-3 times a week, just to see how quiet it is, how the neighborhood is, and I was happy at the time with it. So I went forward with the sale, with the purchase. And so like I said, I spent over $450,000 on the house. The house is worth probably something, over $700,000 right now because of the work I did to it, inside, outside, all because of the location, the peace and quiet, and I've been living there and I've been enjoying the neighborhood, the peace and quiet, the low traffic, and now this comes up. We have people coming from Lynn to drive into our street, on our street. And with all, now it's going to create all the commotion, a lot of commotion, a lot of deliveries, families, visitors. That's not fair, that's not right. The way I look at it, you want to build in Lynn, you should drive through Lynn. Okay, that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Anything different than what's been said before?
I am Craig Childress, 7 Longwood Ave. I am one of the parents that have kids, so obviously I'm completely opposed to this, but that's not what I'm here to say. So just in response to his response to your concern about maintaining the road, I know like a condo association, but how would a condo association be responsible for a road that's not theirs, not on their property, in a different city? So that would be my concern as far as figuring this stuff out, among obviously everything else that they were saying. So I don't know how a condo association would work with a different city. Is that something that's ever been done before?
Owners associations are quite common in the state of Massachusetts. It depends on an agreement that's made between the city of Lynn and the city of Peabody, and what's on the deed that's submitted to the person who's buying the house, their responsibility in depth of what they would have to pay for to the city of Peabody, even though they live in Lynn.
And that's maintaining it also, not just taxes and
Maintaining
everything.
it, though, that would be itemized in the deed to the homeowner that would buy the house in Lynn.
Thank you.
You have something different other than
I
what...
do. Thank you. Thank you, Planning Board, for allowing me the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Craig Welton, resident at 195 Lynn Street, also the Ward 1 counselor for the City of Peabody City Council. I'm here tonight on behalf of our neighborhood on Longwood Ave and the adjoining neighborhoods as well. I've had a chance to speak with many of these residents over the last week. I do know that one of the concerns was not knowing about this prior to that, but I have had the opportunity to speak with them. There are obviously many concerns that you've heard tonight regarding whether it be potential blasting, traffic concerns, things of that nature, which I totally understand and appreciate the neighbor's perspective on that. What I would like to emphasize this evening, however, is that from what I understand from conversations that we've had, I will say that Attorney Ankeles was very kind with his time to meet with myself and Drew and Councilor Turco and Mr. Bellavance as well to answer some of the questions we had, but we could not, through that conversation, come to an understanding where this would benefit Peabody in any manner whatsoever. Subsequent to that conversation, I had a chance to reach out through the mayor's office to the city solicitor to ensure that there was no reason that this should move forward, that there wasn't something that I was missing. And from what I understand, the opinion of the city solicitor is that there is no reason that we would have to approve this project. So for those reasons, I just don't see what the benefit is. I've asked a number of times for it to be explained what the benefit to the residents of Peabody and to the city of Peabody would be. And there really is no benefit. I understand if I was in the developer's position, I understand that this would be the path of least resistance from a development standpoint, but I just don't see it as far as being something that we should entertain as a city to move forward. So beyond that, I would hope that you've heard enough tonight and not move forward with the continuance. But if you so choose, I would request that the public hearing stay open for additional comment before it's voted on. Thank you very much.
Anyone else in line?
Some people online.
Is somebody online? Okay.
If you would like to speak and you're accessing this meeting via Zoom, please use the raise hand function. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Yes, my name is Russ Gallant. I live at 3 Fairview Road, South Peabody. It's off of Elaine Ave, and I live one street down from Longwood Ave. And I echo everything that's been said, but I just wanted to bring up a couple of key points. The future development up there. I know the area. I've lived up on this hill for 59 of my 63 years, and it's not too far from Highland Ave. And my fear is that Longview Ave will be a cut through over to Highland Ave. And if there's further development, if you vote in favor of this, it's out of your hands. It's in the Lynn planning development. It's no longer a Peabody thing. So I am vehemently against this project. I hope you vote it down. And I don't want this neighborhood to turn into a highway, because it will. Thank you.
Seeing no other, right now, I'd like to get a motion from the board to continue to the 13th.
Just before that, we did receive photos tonight. If the board wishes to accept those into the record, we will need a motion for that.
I'd like to have these photos also in that motion, to have these photos attached to the petition.
To continue, so just to clarify, the motion would be to continue action until October 13th, as well as accept photos submitted to the board this evening.
Mr. Chairman, through you to Drew, what is the statutory time we have to act on this subdivision? If you have it handy.
Because this is a definitive plan, it's, I want to say 45 days, but it could be 90. We've done it right now, we're in the time frame, but I would say that the safest bet would be to continue action. I guess your question is, do we need to continue action just yet? Are we still within the time frame?
Well, my understanding is we're voting to not close the public hearing, but I was asking a different question, and that is, what is our statutory time to act?
I believe I'd have to double check with the law, because this is a definitive plan, but no preliminary plan was filed. It's 95 or 45 days. I'd have to double check, though.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to, if there's a motion made, or I'd like to make a separate motion in that the gentleman that talked about the paper street and owning half of the street, I personally was actually involved in a piece of property in Salem that the rear of my property was a paper street, and it was my understanding that I, as an abutter of that street, did in fact own up to the center of it. And if that's the case, I think the legal department should check into whether or not, in order to move forward with this, that you'd have to have written permission from the abutters who are on that paper street, who theoretically own half the street. And so I'm not saying that this is, law or not, but I mean, this is my understanding, and I'd like to have it checked out. So I'd like to make a motion that we have legal check into the conditions of that and how it would pertain to this subdivision. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No, I just some clarification.
So basically, just have the legal department and Peabody check out whether or not we need permission from the abutters who own half of the paper street up to the center line, if in fact that is true. And I think there's enough consideration here that it should be followed up.
Motion is that you want the board to contact city solicitor to clarify that intent, right?
Yes, I didn't say it quite as eloquently as you did, but yes, that's what I was looking for.
I'll take a second on that.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay. Now on the motion to continue.
May I ask, I guess, what are we expecting to be presented to us if we continued? That's going to change, I believe, the opinion here that there's no benefit to the city?
To give the permission, the opportunity to respond.
So I'd like to make a motion to continue the public hearing until October 13th.
Yes.
Based upon allowing the proponent opportunity to respond to the, what do we got, Robert Langley memo dated September 7th, 2022, amongst other concerns raised by the board tonight.
Do we have a second?
Hold on a second. Sorry. I think I'm just a little confused with that motion. I think simply, and you can make a motion upon whatever you would like, but I think just simple to continue the public hearing and board action. I would probably, just because the public hearing will not take place on the 13th, the meeting's on the 6th, we just continue action past that in case that we can't meet that day due to the statutory limits. I think simply just a continuance to keep the public hearing open and move action until October 13th, as well as accept the pictures that were submitted this evening.
Can I say so moved, or do I have to repeat that?
I think
Thank you, Drew. I was just going to say the same thing.
I would, unfortunately, I cannot make a motion, so someone will have to.
I'll cut it short and sweet. Motion to continue the public hearing.
No. Motion to continue action. Motion to keep public hearing open and continue the action, and continue board action until October 13th.
Like a tongue twister. Motion to continue board action and keep the public hearing open until October 13th. So,
We have a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much.
I just want to clarify to everybody that's in attendance this evening, I take it you all want to come to the next meeting. The meeting is October 6th. This is a thing that we do to approve action past that date in case the board cannot meet on that date and has to meet at a later time due to the statutory law. So the meeting will be in this room. The agenda will be posted October 6th. I believe that's the third Thursday or first Thursday of the month in the Wigan Auditorium at 7 p.m. There will be an agenda that will be posted in City Hall and online. The board voted to keep the public hearing open. It will be, they should be able to speak, yep.
At this time, I'd like to go back to the planning board meeting for today's date. Next item on the agenda is 190R Newbury Street, map 35, lot 08038A.
I believe Attorney Kelty is here on this item, 190 Rear Newbury Street.
Jack Kelty?
I will just preface this by saying that I have not heard anything back yet from the Department of Public Services. I know that they did submit revised plans to Department of Public Services as was, I'm just gonna, I think maybe hold on a second just while we let people fizzle out here for noise.
Are we on 190?
Yeah. That's okay. Yeah.
If you don't have anything necessarily to report, we did go to the Conservation Commission last night. We're almost through there. So I would ask that this matter be continued until we get a closeout report from DPS, and I would continue the matter to 10/13.
Mr. Chairman, move that the board allow the matter to be continued till October 13th.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you.
The Pulaski Street project, that finally has gotten a memo that will send us into peer review. So I believe that'll be done through, will that be done through DPS, Public Services, or Mr. Langley?
I'm unsure at the moment. I believe that he will be sending it probably out to a third-party peer review.
That's fine. So that too, I would ask to continue to 10/13.
Would you like continuance of 55 Pulaski Street? Take a motion.
Two would be to 10/13.
I just want to wait till Drew comes back because he's taking the minutes. Mr. Chairman, move to grant the applicant for 55 Pulaski Street an extension of time to act through October 13th. Wait, yes,
13th.
13th.
Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. 67 Pulaski Street, next on the agenda.
That is the Pioneer School, and my team would like to come up and report progress and where they are this evening.
Just before Attorney Kelty continues and the team there, we did receive a letter from the Department of Public Services this evening. I have a hard copy earlier this afternoon. I do have a hard copy here. If the board wishes to, yep, I have them right here. I pass them out to the board. We can pass them down. This is, as you will read, just states that he has reached out to the peer reviewers as well as the applicant's engineering team to discuss the project further.
You need that,
I have a copy. It's just, It's just up to the board if they wish to accept this into the record or not.
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept this letter from Robert Langley into the record.
September 15th, 2022, for 67 Pulaski Street.
Yes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Joe Pesnola from Hancock Associates, representing Pioneer Charter School in their application for site plan review. Since the last meeting, we did receive a peer review memorandum from Horsley Witten dated August 24th. We went through that and responded in a letter dated September 8th to Mr. Langley and the board, along with plans and revised supporting documents, stormwater calculations, and so forth. So that went through point by point. There were some plan changes for that that came out of that, and I can briefly go over those. They're more technical in nature. First of all, there was a comment with regards to whether or not we were diverting water from the pond to the north in Danvers. So we're proposing to introduce a roof drain from a portion of the proposed roof out to that area, so that we're supplying clean water to the pond, so that the hydrology of the pond's not impacted. We did revise the large infiltration system in the main parking lot, responding to comments with regards to that system's proximity to seasonal high groundwater. So that's been done. There was a comment with regards to a discharge point for a small roof drain system behind the gym that was headed right for the back of 6365 Pulaski. So we've rerouted that around and out to the municipal drain system in Pulaski. And we've also coordinated the ground plane plan with the landscape and architect's plan with regards to the bike rack areas and pedestrian areas. We did speak to, I spoke to Mr. Langley today. We still have outstanding coming at us reviews of sewer by Weston and Sampson and water by Ty and Bond, and he expects those next week. So we will respond to those as soon as we get them, as quickly as possible. With regards to just the peer review from Horsley Witten, just to touch upon some of the high points there. There was a kind of a lengthy comment about an existing municipal drain line that runs through the property that we have to move. We have to move both the physical drain line and the easement. That drain line is actually, the easement goes to the inhabitants of Danvers, and it's controlled by the Danvers DPW, even though it drains mostly Peabody, streets and so forth. So it's of interest to both municipalities. So there is a lengthy discussion on that within our response, and a lot of the stormwater computation changes had to do with making sure we're getting that, what's happening with that pipe, we're getting it right. And to do that, we expanded the study area to all of the area of Peabody that is contributing to that. So it comes down Water Street, goes through our site, and goes over to Pulaski, and actually goes across Pulaski and discharges in Peabody. So again, there's one drain manhole in Danvers, so I don't know why Danvers owns the drain line, but nonetheless, we're working with both. With regards to, I think it was mentioned tonight, with regard to the new precipitation totals, the higher rainfall amounts, that Peabody is looking to utilize. We've revised our calculation using those higher amounts. So there were a little bit of tweaking that came from that. From that, we've updated the operation and maintenance plan for the stormwater in accordance with their suggestions. There was some discussion about the wall down behind the play area near the gym, to the southeast of the gym, just in its constructability and what was it going to be made of and all of that because of its close proximity to the property lines. And we're not specifying the final wall construction. We usually leave that to the contractor to design build those. They need to be done by a structural engineer. They need a building permit. They will be done adequately, but we strongly recommend that they use what's known as a gravity block wall system that doesn't have a deep footing and is really suitable for these kind of situations where we're in close proximity to the property line. Horsley Witten did do a review of the Phase 1 environmental. I know that there has been expressed some concerns with the past uses on both properties and if there's anything there. And Katie Lucy from McPhail Associates. McPhail Associates is the licensed site professional that performed the environmental, the Phase 1 environmental on site, and she provided responses to those concerns. And I think the one of the most important note was she notes from looking at the peer reviewer notes that in looking at historic aerial photographs of the Pulaski site, that it looked like at one time it was farmed. So they've asked to do a little bit more digging in the history and whether or not there's anything there that could turn out to be of concern. It's obviously of high importance to the school that everything is clean on that site when they go to actually develop it as the school as you would. So there's more information coming on that. And then the other thing is it was noted that between the time of the Phase 1 environmental and the time that the peer review LSP went out there were 3 new piles on that site of material. And Pioneer Charter School contacted the owner of the property, and those piles were quickly removed so that there's no new material that wasn't subject to the Phase 1 review. So I wanted to touch upon the outdoor recreation space. I know at the last meeting, Dr. Otto had concerns with the availability of space. So we have had discussions internally with the school to understand programmatically what happens on a daily basis, and then look at the suitability and adequacy of the space that we have. Basically, going from the models of their other schools, there will be 6 to 9 outdoor sessions on a daily basis, and based on the 594 students, that's max capacity, and how those sessions will play out. They expect a maximum of 75 students to be out in the outdoor spaces during any one of those sessions. The outdoor space that we have allocated are 2. The one in the back by the gym and the exit from the cafeteria. That will primarily be used for the younger folks, where younger students, because it's close and it's a little bit more controllable with regards to not having to walk down sidewalks and so forth. That one's 3,500 square feet. And then across from the main entrance, shown in both areas are on this plan shown in green. The one across from the main entrance will be also a level area, fenced and grass. There are no details right now for as far as whether benches and equipment and anything will be in there, but that one's about 6,000 square feet. So we have about 9,500 square feet of area. Now, there is no state mandated requirement for outdoor recreation space, and some schools don't have any. Some schools don't have any interior. Some charter schools don't have any interior gymnasium space. We have a gymnasium, so there's plenty of room inside for physical activity, but also the 9,500 square feet outside. But if we did look at the Mass Department of Education guidelines or regulations for daycare centers where there is a spatial requirement per child, that's 7,500 square feet. It's 6.06 CMR 7 standards for the licensure and approval of family child care, small group and school age and large group and school age child care programs. That's the regulation, and that's where the 75 square feet per child comes from. If, again, we're talking max students outside at any one time is 75. 75 times 75 is 5,600, and again, we have 9,500. So, which equates to 125 square feet per student. So I heard the concern and wanted to address it. And as an engineer, I want to use numbers. I want to try to quantify it. I want to try to give it context. But it is important to Pioneer Charter, and they're looking at it. Additionally, there is an idea. And they'd like to follow up on it, but can't fully commit to it, of doing a roof deck, a green roof deck area, which is allowed. Obviously, there will be safety measures in place and so forth, but they're thinking maybe there could be a garden up there, or there could be experiment space. They're looking into the possibility of adding a stop to the elevator so that they have ADA access up there. So it is something real, and that could be upwards of 20,000 square feet. So it is on their radar, and they're looking at it. We just financially we can't commit to it at this point because of the budgetary constraints of getting the school built and getting the primary programmatic things in there. But I just wanted to make sure that we followed up and let you all know that it's important to the charter school, and we're moving forward. So given the fact that we have, we are anticipating responses to our responses from Horsley Witten on both the civil and the environmental. We're waiting for the sewer and water. We'd obviously be looking for a continuance here to the next hearing. And hopefully we can show some additional progress in moving this towards completion.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'll accept a motion to continue.
Can I have a question?
Go ahead.
This might just be minor, and maybe nothing changed. On the revised sets, there was no landscape page plan attached. Is that because the landscape plan is not changing at all? It's just staying the same?
That is correct. And we will also want to make sure we're getting the feedback on the technical aspects of that. And what we anticipate doing is once we hear back from Horsley Witten that we got it right, and there's no more changes to the grading and utilities and all of that. We'll do a final update on the landscape plan and give the board, hopefully one more final full set for, to stand as the approved set, hopefully.
Mr. Chairman, a comment? I'm the person that brought up at the last meeting about the potential environmental issues and the hazardous material potential and the trash and the old trucks and the things, and I just wanted to comment on how happy I am that it's being addressed and presented to this board in such a way. Thank you.
Have a motion for the continuance to the 13th of October?
Mr. Chairman, move that the action on the application of 67 Pulaski Street for site plan approval be continued until October 13th, 2022.
Have a second?
Second. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, we received earlier this week some decisions from the City Council, as well as some regional notices, all of which have since passed since we got them. But I do have three approval letters, special permits from the City Council that we received this week. One is for a liquor store at 23 Central Street, special permit for a retail store to allow packaged alcohol beverages. The other is for 17 Central Street, which would be also to allow packaged alcohol beverages. And then the third would be the city submittal of a special permit for the use of a children's museum at 10 Main Street in downtown Peabody. I have these here in front of me if anybody would like to review them. Secondly to that, I think everybody might remember that we received a environmental notification form as part of the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act for 133 Forest Street, more commonly known as Salem Country Club. We received a other piece from them. I believe it's just supplemental to what they already submitted. I have a hard copy of that right here if anybody wishes to review that as well. And that is it for other items probably before the board.
Mr. Chairman, move to adjourn.
Second.
Aye.
Thank you all for your patience in a very trying night.